ये हथियारबंद है।
सर क्या हुआ सर, हमने क्या किया सर?
I'm coming. हाँ, I'll take it.
यही लोग थे ना।
उनको प्रिवेंट करना चाहिए था, ये उनकी जिम्मेदारी है। हमारी रिपोर्टर की कोई जिम्मेदारी नहीं है। हमारे बहुत सारे यंग रिपोर्टर जर्नलिस्ट जो अपना कैरियर शुरू कर रहे हैं, उन पर हमला किया, जानलेवा हमला हुआ और कोई पूछने वाला नहीं। देश की राजधानी में इस तरह की वारदात होती है और हम सबके सामने होती है। पार्लियामेंट चल रही है और पार्लियामेंट के बीच में ये सब हो रहा है, तो ये मुझे लगता है कि ये जो लोग इस सिस्टम को चला रहे हैं, जो सिस्टम के टॉप में बैठे हुए हैं, जो सिस्टम को ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं, ये सवाल का उत्तर उनको देना चाहिए कि ये घटनाओं के लिए जिम्मेदार कौन है।
पूरे देश में ये हो रहा है, उत्तर प्रदेश में ये हो रहा है, दिल्ली में ये हो रहा है, कश्मीर में हो रहा है, देश के कई हिस्सों में हो रहा है। और इस वजह से क्या हुआ कि आज आप ग्लोबल इंडेक्स में, प्रेस फ्रीडम के ग्लोबल इंडेक्स में भारत का स्थान 142वां है। शर्म की बात है ये, मोदी सरकार के लिए शर्म की बात है कि वो इतना बुरा पूरी दुनिया में छवि जा रही है कि डेमोक्रेसी का हालत इस देश में ये है।
I am personally extremely well, I won't say shocked, but concerned, because when journalists who are working at Newslaundry go out and I get a call that we've been attacked, my colleague has been inappropriately touched or dealt with, it's deeply concerning. As someone who is hiring young journalists, I feel responsible that I am responsible for their safety and for their well-being, and I am shocked and amazed that the Home Minister of this country feels no such responsibility. I feel a sense of shame and a sense of deep inadequacy that I cannot do enough to ensure that my colleagues and my young journalists can work in a safe environment. And for a man with the kind of power at his disposal to not feel at all embarrassed is deeply concerning, and is a commentary on the diminishing value of what is important in our country. And this will not come back, value will not come back if we just sit and do nothing about it. We have to raise our voices in publications we work with, in social media that we are a part of, or among friends and family that we interact with.
I think there is already maybe conversations in newsrooms where they're worrying about who they are sending for what kind of coverage, because one is the fight back and one is the standing up to people. The other is the immediate concern of the safety of the people on the ground. You know, so I think this is slightly more recent. I mean, I don't think this was a conversation in our newsrooms till very recently. And there is also an apprehension among journalists with a certain name or who belong to a certain community of how they will be received.
Initially, when I came to this field, I was really excited about the fact that we are young journalists and we are very passionate. And coming to Delhi and seeing the kind of intimidation, after a point it really gets, it takes a toll on your mind. After a point, you will hear your relatives saying कि तुम कुछ गलत तो नहीं कर रही हो ना, because a lot of hate, अगर तुम कुछ सच कर रही होती, तुम कुछ अच्छा कर रही होती, तो इतना hate नहीं आता. But how do I make them understand that this is what you get when you speak truth, right?
I'd like to sort of just request some of you who are here the first time that it is good to see that there are journalists out in number. But I think we also have to learn to appreciate that when things go wrong, the solidarity of the profession, to have other journalists stand by with you is of enormous help. It is just to remind you that similar incidents will happen to other journalists who may not have the same ability to connect
in the larger network of journalism that it is our duty still to turn out and stand beside them whenever that happens.
There are people who actually have your back, right? For me, for personally, that is something that always keeps me going. My friends, my parents. So, if you know, I was arrested in Tripura and there were 2 FIRs against me. And it was really bizarre. It was really menacing because I was subjected to a lot of pressure, a lot of threats of UAPA against me, and that they won't let me go out of Tripura if I don't delete the footages or if I don't name my sources. So that was actually fearful. But then I took a month of break and I saw my parents actually having my back and telling me that, see, you have not done something wrong and you have to go out there because this is your first chance, and अगर आप first chance में ही रुक जाओगे तो these people will come again.
इस प्रोफेशन में रिलीजन और धर्म हमारे क्या अपना जो हमारा जो फेथ है, उस फेथ से ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट ये है कि हमारा जो हमारी जो ड्यूटी है एज ए रिपोर्टर, एज ए जर्नलिस्ट, जिसके लिए हमने अपनी कैरियर को डेडिकेट किया कि हम देश और दुनिया को यहाँ जो ट्रुथ है उस सच्चाई के बारे में बताएंगे। तो ये जो अनएथिकल चीजें हुई हैं कि उनको काम करने से रोकना, मुझे लग रहा है कि इससे बड़ा हादसा कुछ हो नहीं सकता, इससे बड़ी घटना कुछ हो नहीं सकती। और मैं अभी भी मानता हूँ कि रिपोर्टर्स आर ऑलवेज विदाउट बॉर्डर।
The question of identity, the question of gender, the question of how journalists are to be treated is at the heart of what we are discussing. And we already know that this government has a larger problem with journalism. It does not want us to do journalism that is critical of the government. This is part of that.
They are wary of speaking to people with, with a certain identity. So it's not just what's happening from the, what happened at Burari or what happened at Ballia. It's also the dehshat that is there with the people who we need to reach out to as journalists for their voices. So it's now percolating to not just incidents like Burari. It's the everyday communalism that is now something that young journalists or any journalists of any age who are now facing, anyone who's doing ground reporting now.
It's unfortunate that haters are allowed to target journalists in full public view, abuse them, assault them, intimidate them, stop them from doing their job. I think very correctly that seems to be the basic aim. Shrink the space for us to do our job, stop us as far as possible from doing our job, deflect us from doing our job. To taunt the journalists from the stage at a public event, it's not just unfortunate, it's unacceptable.
पूरे देश में पत्रकारिता को लेकर एक एजेंडा है इस सरकार का। मैंने पत्रकारिता जब की है तो बहुत सी सरकारें आई गई हैं, कोई भी सरकार पत्रकारों से खुश नहीं होती है।
Supervising the young reporters, the young people who are out in the field and doing this kind of very brave reporting. So I would like to commend all of you, and I'd like to commend the editors who support them at this time, because too often we have seen proprietors who do not back their staff. I'm glad that at least that happens occasionally.
The question now is, what next? How are we going to be able to push back and continue to be as loud in our journalism as is the screaming that's coming from the powers that be? Everyone's hope is pinned on young journalists not getting cowed down by what is happening, and for people like us who run news organizations to give them all the freedom, the support and the backing and the legal support that they can be. I mean, that's really, it's the everyday battle now, right? But in battling the everyday, we've got to worry about what's the larger what next.
फर्क ये है कि ये सिर्फ असहनशील नहीं है, दे आर नॉट जस्ट इंटॉलरेंट, वो बदला लेने का मानसिकता से काम करते हैं। जो जितने सारे संस्थाएं हैं वो जो सत्य में हैं उनके लिए हथियार बन गया। जो पत्रकार है, जो छोटे शहर में काम करते हैं, जो छोटे वेबसाइट, छोटे पत्रिका के लिए जो काम करते हैं, उनका ऊपर ज़्यादा हमला हो रहे हैं.
If anyone from the Delhi police is watching or listening to this will read about this. I belong to a family. My father was in the army, and most of my friends, their fathers have been in the army. And I remember that whenever there would be a breach of the border or anything, they would feel a sense of personal embarrassment. यार हमारे रहते हुए कैसे हो गया? In the presence of policemen, the brazenness with which a mob was acting, including misbehaving with policemen, I have no idea how any policeman does not feel a sense of deep embarrassment and shame. Even if the masters above you are asking you to put your pride aside, just don't put your self-respect aside. How can they not feel personally assaulted when they are treated with such disregard in a public place? And if that is where we are going, if it's the rule of the mob that we are acknowledging, I don't see how any person in uniform is okay with it.
साथियों, ये दो अलग अलग घटनाएं चाहे बलिया में हुई हो या दिल्ली के बुराड़ी में हुई हो, ये आने वाले दिनों के संकेत हैं. ये आने वाले दिनों में पत्रकारों और पत्रकारिता की हालत क्या होगी, ये इसके संकेत बताए जा रहे हैं. The sheer energy of our younger colleagues and their courage, and I can't praise them enough for the kind of maturity and the kind of energy and the kind of commitment and dedication that they show in these very, very tough times. I think you go back 30 years, some of us have seen some very trying times, but I am fairly certain that these are possibly as trying times as there have ever been, be it 92, be it 2002, etc. So these are very comparable times. So for all the younger journalists who are here, broadly, you all are all doing fantastic work.
हम रिपोर्टर्स ग्राउंड पर जाकर असलियत इसलिए ढूंढ पाते हैं क्योंकि हमें हमारे सब्सक्राइबर्स का सहयोग है. हम विज्ञापनकर्ताओं पर निर्भर नहीं करते. इसलिए आज ही हमारी वेबसाइट पर जाकर हमें सब्सक्राइब करें और गर्व से कहें, मेरे खर्च पर आज़ाद है खबरें.